our final presentation here before the break, Adept Integrator. So let me pop over one slide here. So you know me, I'll be teaming here for this presentation. Do we have anybody out there that feels they're pretty good linguist, wants to take a shot at pronouncing my good friend's name here? I do have permission to pick on him here. So, Chris, you want to give it a shot? One more time.
Jean Grobler.
Close. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Anybody gets it on the first crack, we'll give you a gift card.
There you go.
Anyone else? Synergist folks included. Oh, Todd.
Juan Grobler.
We'll give you a second try.
I don't think that's good.
All right. You wanna let us know?
Okay, yeah. So I'm Jean Grobler. So I know it's spelt Juan, but I come from South Africa, and we couldn't say Juan, so they call me Jean. And the Grobler is a French Huguenot name, and to pronounce that correctly, you've got to almost like growl, but silent growl, and go Grobler. Okay, so that's Jean Grobler. But since being here in the United States, I'm used to being called Juan Grobler. So I respond to all of them. So thanks.
Yep. So Jean's going to present Adept Integrator with me. Jean, you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So where do I come from? I come from a legal background. I studied law in South Africa, University of Natal. Realized that law wasn't for me. So I decided to go tinker in IT, and I worked with the IBM software group in the time when they first started out with the whole middleware platform and building this glue, and so I got trained by them, and the rest is history, I can probably say. So I've been in integration and software integration for a very long time, almost 17 years, and a lot of that time I spent in South Africa building integrations and ERPs for enterprises such as Anglo and the like in South Africa. And then about 3 years ago, I decided to expand that business a little bit further. And so now we've got integrations and clients which span the globe. And we've got clients in Australia, in the Middle East, Europe, London, and the US. So that's what we do now. What do I do for fun? I ride bicycles. So I spend a lot of time on a mountain bike. I love getting out there in nature, spending hours and hours and hours out on the bike. And I love racing bikes. I love the adrenaline of it. And I love doing ultra marathons and endurance rides. So that was my big picture. And I'm significantly shrunk down since then. So that's what I do for fun.
John recently, not too long ago, completed a race called I think it's called the Epic in South Africa. Tell us just a quick glimpse of what that race is like.
No, but then I'll be bragging now. So
a little bragging's not too bad.
The Cape Epic is essentially the Tour de France of mountain biking. It is an 8-day ultramarathon staged event in the Western Cape. They change their route every single year, so you don't have a clue what that route looks like. It is a professional event, so it's a professional cycling event where they allow amateurs like myself to come and ride with professionals and race with them. And, it was probably the toughest, most grueling, soul-searching event I've ever been through, where you spend at least I spent at least between 6 and 7 hours a day on the bike, racing with my partner, and the professionals would finish it in around about 4 to 5 hours, and then you got other people which would spend 12, 15 hours on a bike. So it's certainly a grueling event and uncompromising. If you do not get if you do not get in a certain time, or you split from your partner, or you're racing under what they call UCI rules. If you don't obey the rules, you get your number board cut off and sent home. So It was one of those races which certainly taught me a little bit about professional racing and respect for the likes of Chris Froome and the professional peloton, and just understand what these professional riders go through to perform the way they do, especially when you start putting yourself up to that. And trust me, not even close to their levels.
Right.
So.
Amazing. I think Jean said his partner finished like the last half of the race with a torn bicep
Yeah.
or dislocated bicep. Anyway, some people's idea of fun, right? All right. I can relate. All right. So let's get started here. Adept Integrator. So how many of you folks have integrated Adept with some other business system? One or more. Show of hands. We've got a few. Anybody want to shout out what you've integrated with, Norm? SAP and Notes, okay. I saw some hands back here. What systems did you integrate with? I can't even see it. Anybody else? Back here on the right? Homegrown systems, okay. And one here, no? Okay. All right, so business systems integration can be incredibly valuable, right? Data quality, efficiency, business intelligence, great reasons to integrate systems with each other. But here's the difference. Adept Integrator is an integration platform. It makes it easy for us to integrate Adept with IT systems, ERP systems, maintenance systems, work order management systems, plant maintenance systems, you name it. And we can do it easy, fast, affordable, with ultimately lower total cost of ownership. It's easier to maintain ongoing. So these are the reasons why Adept Integrator is here and now part of the Synergist solution set. It'll help you orchestrate data flows that can really improve business process and help you achieve your business goals. So that's what it's all about. And when we talk about integration, what are we talking about? What kind of scenarios? So it could be really anything, as you'll hear as we move through the presentation. But a typical example that we've heard for many, many years, and we've got customers doing this separate of Integrator, but the idea is maybe it's a utility or a mining company or a pipeline, and they've got critical assets that they need to manage. Again, pipeline, mine, utility infrastructure, and they're using SAP or Maximo or Oracle's JD Edwards or some other system, any other system really, to manage those assets and the maintenance of those assets. And they're using Adept for their as-built drawings and documents and their project documents as well. But there's no link from, say, the work order in the ERP or asset management system and the documents that are associated with that work order. So I can pull up a work order, but I have no idea what drawings, documents should be related to that. Safety instructions, equipment manuals, SOPs. There's no way when I'm in the asset management system to pull up and take a look at those drawings and documents, to view them. Maybe when I print the work order, I want to have the documents printed as well. So with Adept Integrator, we can integrate all of that. And many of our customers also need geospatial data. So just building onto this one little example here, could be those utility networks. It could be a government agency with critical facilities to manage. They need maybe to be able to zoom into an area of a map and quickly drill down to the drawings associated with a geolocation. So again, we can pull all this together with Adept Integrator. And Jean's going to talk a little bit more about another scenario we're working on right now with a very large gold mining company.
So this is a client which we're busy speccing out their solution, and we're in the process of developing. But we thought it would be a good idea to actually share it with you because it gives you ideas. When we speak about integration, a lot of clients say, well, what can we integrate? So we thought we would just give you some scenarios. And this is a particular scenario which we're talking about. The client has what they call an application for expenditure process. As they're a large gold mine, they need to apply for their capital, get their capital approved. And what they've got is they've got a SharePoint site which they will log an opportunity. This is the initial point of coming into the request. We've got a project, we want to kick off a project, we want to start a new mine or something like that. And so they would log on to SharePoint and log that opportunity. From logging that opportunity, we need to update their cost management system. And cost management is really their, not quite their ERP, but how they manage cost within their project and their program. So they need to log that into a register and make sure that they can time phase that data and get that view. Once they've logged that opportunity, that information needs to get up into some sort of executive information system. So in this instance, it needs to get up to their Hyperion. And so we start pushing the data as well up to Hyperion and get that through. And then the next one.
Working on it.
I know.
Let's see.
I didn't want to push the button here
I got
if you're
it.
pushing. So once that opportunity has been logged and now is visible to the greater world and the executives, we have to fill out a complete request for capital form. So now, obviously, we need to get into further detail. Probably we need some cash flow forecasts. We need water quality analysis, you know, whatever those requirements are. And so we've built that form up, and the client starts gathering all those artifacts and starting to get those artifacts together. It's at this point that the form is submitted. And once that form is submitted, it then goes down into Adept.
Interesting.
Okay, and that's where we start gathering all that information. From there, you'll see number 7, it's a little grayed out there. We'll follow the Adept workflow, and then there is a workflow process with a number of triggers which kick off for that document to be managed. From there, that process would be going through either a rejection or an approval focus, or it needs to go to a panel review, and that whole process is managed within the Adept system. And then finally, once that process has been approved, it then goes to Oracle, grabs the budget, commits that budget, and then updates the Prism system with your time phase data, with your budgets, and logs that information within Oracle. What we're doing as well, you'll see that the exchange function pops up. And yeah, we all know that we can send an email, but we use email as a method of communication. So essentially, every single one of these systems which play in this orchestration, if I can show it, talk about it like this, is hinged upon email communication. Because what we found is that people like engaging with systems in the manner which they're familiar with. Okay, you may be out, you may be traveling, and you want to be able to approve an email as well as approve a document. And so we've catered for the seamless response of the of approvals, rejections, commentary through the email system. As well for the IT folk and the IT geeks of us all, we need to get some sort of error notification. So instead of logging XMLs and text files and databases to see what's happening, what we were able to do as well is send your power users, your IT folk, your call desk an email. This error has occurred. Retry the transaction. So it's not a matter of waiting for that call to come in, but we're trying to be proactive, that somebody knows, okay, that particular transaction didn't happen. Let's go and have a look at it before that call comes in and try to be a little bit more proactive about it. So it's real time from that point of view. Go through the next slide. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I jump around this slide quite a lot because I talk to everything in the slide. But essentially, what are the features of the integration engine and what we want to talk about here? One of the biggest points I always focus on is connectivity to many applications. And so we mentioned IBM, we mentioned Lotus Notes, we've mentioned SAP. You know, what we've done is we've developed a number of connectors. And these connectors are certified by what we call these industry solution vendors, such as IBM and Oracle and Salesforce and Cispro. And by certifying our connectors to these industry solution vendors allows us to connect up with their platforms in a really simple manner. Okay? We don't have to be the SAP expert or the Lotus Notes expert or the Oracle expert, because we've got a connector which comes in and interacts with that application at the level in which that industry solution vendor wants us to integrate with. Okay? We don't go down to database levels or interfere with any of the business logic of those applications. So we come in a certified manner, a trusted manner to that environment. In terms of a connector builder, we've got an opportunity to build our own connectors up where we can connect up and build connectors. And then we can schedule these transactions. We can schedule a whole bunch of transactions, bringing data in at certain times or trigger information. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And one of the key other features which I love talking to, and I'm going to show this to you without getting too technical with the audience today, is it's a code-free environment. You don't need a bunch of coders to sit and do this type of integration. Okay? You've got to be a business process orientated kind of person, and I'll talk to that in a little bit more detail. It is enterprise grade. You know, we talk about the gold mine. We've built integrations across the globe, connecting Europe to the US, connecting US to Asia Pacific. That's the level at which we can actually expand this integration and roll it out. So it really has a phenomenal capacity to expand. And lately, what I've found is when I'm engaging with a lot of clients is they want to know about security. They want to know, is it safe? Because we're punching holes in firewalls and all sorts of things, and how do we connect to all these systems? Well, it's very simple. From a point of view is that when we create those connections to other systems, let's say we're going from the cloud into an on-premise solution and we have to open up a port on a firewall, that transaction's on a port which not many people even know that port even exists. And secondly, to even get to that data and understand that data which is coming through, it's in a black box. So you really need to get some sort of knowledge of how the integration platform works before you can actually get into that data. So from that point of view, that's really, really key. And I'm getting a lot of questions, especially in the United States right now, around security, and I think with the Equifax and US Steel, the hackings from China and all that kind of stuff, it's quite a hot topic at this point in time, which we find. So let's go through the benefits, and we're going to go through these one at a time because we really want to drive these points home. I've spoken about pre-certified adapters, and integrating SAP, Adept, Prism, IBM, Microsoft, SharePoint. These are applications which you are familiar with, and which I'm almost sure, as we look at that point on the board, you would have one, two, or almost all of these applications within your organization. And the integration which you have today is human. It's manual. So how do we automate this so that if we look at the example from the gold mine, that you update an application once at source and updates all the other applications. This is the key tenet which we want to be bringing through to our clients. So we can integrate these applications. It's bidirectional. So from a point of view, a lot of clients say, well, you know, we can send data to Adept, or can we receive data back? And I'm going to show you a little bit of an example a little later, that it is bidirectional. And you know, we can update SAP, we can receive data from SAP at the same time. Because we engage with these applications at a layer which is trusted, it's a lot easier for us to do that and do that bidirectional updating. Reducing mistakes. Well, if you can imagine the scenario where you're updating SharePoint, then you're updating Adept, then you're going to your ERP, and that being a manual process, it goes without cause that there is going to be a mistake at some point. And invariably, you don't realize that mistakes happened until way after the fact. Okay? So that's the kind of thing which, you know, if you take the philosophy of let's update the application once at source and have that update all the other applications, well, then you're reducing mistakes. You're creating efficiencies, think that's my next slide. Okay. Increasing business performance and efficiencies, and thereby releasing up the people working on systems to be far more efficient. Lower operational costs, well, that goes without saying. If you can do a lot more within a day, you don't need as many people, and so we can drive home efficiencies and operational costs. One of the key things which we keep going into our clients, and we find this a lot, is our clients say they have an integration already, or we want to do what we call a point-to-point integration. So what we would do is we would build this integration, and it's a whole bunch of line code, and if you can imagine it, it's the cemented pipe between two applications with certain business logic which rests in one person's head. What we trying to drive here is an opportunity where you have a single view of all the integrations within your platform, within your infrastructure, so that supporting this environment doesn't become the fact that 20 years down the line you had this integration and you're trying to find that person who wrote that code and it's 20 years old. Okay, I've seen many occasions where one particular occasion, I remember I was with the Durban municipality, which is the county in Durban in South Africa, which had COBOL code, which they had written 15 years ago. And there was one man who supported that environment and still is supporting that environment. And trust me, he's really old. He really wants to retire, and he can't. So that's the kind of thing which we want to get at. We want to get to a point where you can manage, support, and maintain this environment. And then, of course, consolidate data into your BI systems. Get that up into your data warehouse. Get that information up and visible to your executives, and create that, what I call executive candy at that point of time. So how do we fit into the platform? How does it look? Well, if I have to just take a very simple architecture flow, you got your corporate network at the bottom, and you've got a number of those applications, or one or two of them out already in use. Then you would have your application layer being the Adept Suite, Publish Wave. And what we've done is we look at Adept Integrator as a module which extends the platform of Adept to connecting to your corporate networks. So I'm very cautious by using the word platform. For the IT folk in the room, they get really nervous when we start talking platform. And the reason why is that they don't need another platform to support. Okay? So look at it as a module which extends the platform and makes the application more amenable and interactive to your corporate systems. And that's how we want to show it. And then, of course, your display layers at the top being Microsoft BI, Tableau. You can name your BI layer at the top. So you're probably thinking at this point, I wonder if my application can integrate. What is available in the market? And this slide I spend a lot of time on, because this is just a really good example of the connectors which we have, which have been certified by the industry solution vendor. So if you see on the right-hand side in the gray box, you will see pretty much all the applications which we're familiar with. And these are certified tier 1 connectors, which we've got out in the market and able to utilize. And then on the right-hand side, in the navy blue, is the protocols which we use to connect to other applications. So let's say you have an application which doesn't exist on the right-hand side. Your left, my right, sorry. And you want to connect up to an application which was homegrown and built, or is really what is specific to you guys. Well, that's very simple. We can do that through a web service or a database call. Okay, and invariably what we do often is we would connect up to that application together with the vendor. We would talk with their architects or their consultants and connect up in a manner which supports that business process. Okay, now let's say we do connect up to the database and use a blended approach of some sort of web service, because sometimes web services are very narrow and we want to integrate a whole bunch more. We can actually blend that together and build those business rules right in the middle of Adept. And I'll show you why we do that and how we do that in a minute or two. But yes, we can actually bring that connector together and then run that connector through the connector builder and have a connector ready for you. So you can reuse this in your enterprise throughout the globe if you had that need. Okay. Connecting up to EDI if you needed to get out to a retail supply chain. EDI is that standard is available. And just recently, the most exciting part of this is the Internet of Things. Now, if I have to just talk a little bit about the Internet of Things, that's really the opportunity of connecting up to the consumer world. We all utilize devices in our homes, in our cars, which work on that standard, on the Internet of Things. And that standard, which we talk about, is what we call MQTT, okay? And we just recently bought a washer and dryer, and I realized that it has the Internet of Things capabilities to it. So I thought, well, let's connect up to that. So we connected up to the application, and we could see a little app, and you can see, oh, we're coming into the spin cycle. That was really cool. But that's standard kind of stuff. Thought we would take it a little further. So what we did is we got onto our server, and I connected our integrator onto our washer dryer, and then connected it up to an SMS, so that when I was out, I got an SMS that was finished the spin cycle. That's the kind of thing which you can do. So let's take this a little bit further. If you've got a PLM system out there and you've got a consumer set of products out in the market, how do you get error, service calls, problems, and gather all that information back into your organization so that you can problem solve, fix, and create tickets for? Well, the Internet of Things is that protocol which you can start leveraging and connect in to Adept Integrator to start gathering that data. Now, where do you put that data? What do you do with that? Well, that's the business process we need to think of. So I want to expand your minds and say, well, that's the opportunity. That's where you're going to find integration going in the next few months. So that's just some of the thought on that. So I hope I've explained to you what's happening and what we can connect to. Pretty much 80 to 90% of all the applications out in the marketplace we can connect to natively, or we can actually create a connection and an integration for.
And I'll just add, this is connecting Adept to anything, and it's connecting other systems to other systems as well, of course.
Correct. So the powerful orchestration capabilities, and we now get into a little bit of IT speak, and I hope not to get too technical for you. And if I get too technical at this point, just hold your breath. It's not going to be long. We'll be out of it very, very quick. But we do need to satisfy some of the technical folks at the conference. But essentially, there are three acronyms at the top there, and I'm sure you've heard them. BPM, Business Process Modeling. Enterprise Service Bus, ESB. And ETL, Extract, Transform, and Load. Have you heard of those acronyms? Yeah, okay. Well, can we do them? Do we follow these protocols? Yes, every single one of them. And the reason why I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail is how we do integrations is through a process of business process modeling. We sit down with you and define that business process. Okay. Doing the ETL, often we need to get information from a source, transform that data, and get that into a data warehouse of some sort. Well, that's bread and butter kind of stuff. That's essentially what we do. We can transform dates. We can apply an exchange rate. We can change the file type. We can even reorganize that file and get that into a data warehouse of some sort. And then finally, Enterprise Service Bus. Now, this is where the IT folk get a little bit nervous and scary, because at this point, this is where we're starting to talk about a platform which really extends into that IS platform. But essentially, The reason why ESB is up there is that we can set triggers for certain applications rather than polling a machine and pinging it all the time. Like, let's say we were looking for a purchase order to be approved in SAP before we can bring that document through and match it to a job number. We can have SAP trigger that transaction for us. Okay, and that's the capabilities of an enterprise service bus, the events and triggers, which can be set from either side of the landscape, and that's what we do. And then, you know, monitoring your integrations, making sure your business processes are up. Well, there's a pretty robust web monitor, which you can see from anywhere in the world where the platform is running and working. So ease of integration. This is where we're going to get a little technical. We're going to show you a little bit about the tool, and I'm going to show you a little demo. But this is a step which we take. This is how we would engage with you. I spoke about business process modeling. So let's say you had an opportunity and you said, oh, I want to integrate 2 applications or 3 or 4 applications. Let's go down this road. The first thing we would do is we'd build a business process map. Okay, we've got a swim lanes up there, and we've got the applications listed along that swim lane. The example which you're seeing over there is the large gold mine, and that is their request for capital process. And so what we'd do is we'd map that business process out, linking the applications and building that process up. From there, we would take that process and we'd put it into the integrator tool. Now you're actually seeing the actual inside workings of the integrator, of the Adept Integrator. As you can see, there's not one bit of code there. What we do is we take that business process and we build the flow, as you would see, within the tool. Now, just to take you a little bit through the tool. In the main pane, you'll see the business process flow. At the top, there's a very slight line called trigger area. That's where we set those triggers. We can set watch folders, like Publish Wave. We can set watch application. We can set a trigger. We can set schedules and a whole lot of things. And then on the left-hand side, you've got all your connectors. You can see at the bottom, it's not really showing very well if you're sitting at the back, but I'll read some of them out. There's .NET, there's Microsoft CRM, there's IBM, there's JD Edwards, there's SAP, Business One, Lotus Notes, IBM iSeries, pretty much all your connectors. And all you really need to do is drag these connectors onto the main pane and bring them into the orchestration. So you can see from our first slide to now, we're actually just bringing a business process together within the tool. On the right-hand side, yesterday there was a talk about daisy chaining workflows. Well, that's where we daisy chain workflows. We can daisy chain a whole lot of business processes together so that they interact as one big workflow. Okay, and that's essentially what we do on the right-hand side in the Solution Explorer. So that's how we would do it. We'd build those workflows, and then we would get a little bit deeper. And if you see just above the flow steps, there's a data mapper. We now need to map the fields between the 2 different applications. So if we just go to that slide, you will see what we do is once we go into that object, we expose the fields of, let's say, SAP and Adept, and we literally drag and drop those fields together. Now, what's really nice about this and cool is that applications are constantly evolving and changing. You're always adding new fields. There's always a new business function which comes, so we need to remap that. And we don't have to go back to the developer or the coder and say, hey, we need to change this, and then he's going to go and scour through the code and find those mapping tables and the like and build that up. Essentially, all we do is we literally go into the data mapper, refresh the fields, the field becomes available, and then it's a drag and drop between the 2 applications. And you can see the drag and drop connectivity between them. It's at this point that we can do transformations. We can apply a formula. We can apply a transformation, a date change. And we manipulate the data in transit. There's no data at rest. Everything which is happening is happening in transit as it moves through to the source system or to the target system. Okay, here's some other examples of integrations which we've got, and just a view. You can see the FX, which Scott is highlighting. That's where we're transforming data or hard coding certain data to meet a business rule within the ERP or the application. And that just gives you a bit more of an example of that. And that's really integration between a cost management system and Adept, which we've done. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through a demonstration, and I'm going to talk you through a scenario firstly before we get into the demo, and then I'll talk you through the video. So the scenario we're painting here is we've got a CRM system, Salesforce, and what we're doing is we're updating the customer data, customer master data in your CRM system, such as Salesforce, and you want that data to go through to Adept. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that data and we're going to move that through to Adept. And the philosophy of update data at source is what we're showing here. From there, that data updates into Adept. Now, the user would come into Adept, and we're going to change some data within Adept. And we want that data, as it's changed in Adept, to trigger the next transaction, which is now update ERP. And then you can see it updates the ERP, or goes through to IBM or Oracle or SAP or whatever that may be the case. So, of course, we don't have a live SAP environment. We don't have a live Salesforce environment yet. So what I want to talk with you about and show you today, what we've done is we've taken Excel and we've taken a folder structure, and let's represent Excel as an application where we will drop that into a folder, being Salesforce. And then what we'll do is we'll update Adept, and then we'll go into Adept, and we'll change some data within Adept, and then we'll output that to the ERP, in this instance, and Excel. Okay? So I'm asking you to be a little bit creative in that, but just in the sense that we can't expose our clients' SAP systems, and we don't have SAP systems. We thought we would do it in this manner for you. So from that point of view, that's how we're going to do the demo. And what I've done as well, just because I know Murphy always plays at these events, and I've done this a number of times where I try to do a live demo and the network fails on me, I've decided to record it just to be safe and make that work. But if you want, you can come and chat with me at the end, and I'll actually take you onto the server and show you at a later stage. So let's go through the video, and I'll talk you through the video. So what we've done now is we've logged onto the video, onto our server. This we did earlier this week. Here's our Salesforce system. We've got Galea Jones, architect, and we're changing their address to Quakertown. So as you'll notice up on the board, we've created the update, and we've changed some of the data. So as you will see, Galea Jones is there. I'm just waiting for the video to move along. As we move it to the side, you will see we've got two folders up there. We've got from Salesforce shortcut, and we've got two ERP. So those are the two folders which we're going to be outputting this data to. I just thought I'd blow this up so the people at the back of the room can see. And this is where we would update the data. Moment of silence as we close this down. It's awkward silence right now. Obviously, I was going to be a lot more verbose, yes, on the video. Okay, so as we go into Adept now, we're going to go into the data card. We're going to go into the job number for Galea Jones, and we're going to have a look at the data card. So we've pulled up a number of their drawings. Let's go into the data card, and let's just have a look at their address. As you can see, their address is 81 Main Street, Allentown. So just to show that the data in Adept is different from the data in Salesforce or in the Excel sheet. And then we're going to move out to closing that down now in a second. So this is the point where we now hit submit within Salesforce. What we're going to do is we're going to take the Excel sheet and we're going to drag it into the folder called to Adept. Okay. As we go into that folder, the integrator tool is sitting watching that folder. As you can see, it's watching that folder, and then it will process that file. So what we've done is, just to show that visually, it processed that file, took the data, extracted the data, and then once it was finished opening and extracting the data, it then moved that data into a process folder so that we knew that it was gone. Okay? We're going to go now into Adept, and let's go to the data card for Galea Jones and the job number. And there you will see the address has changed from Allentown to Quakertown. Okay, so that's really simple. I mean, that's just a really quick, easy update. And that's just the philosophy of it working. What's always difficult to show clients is that integration happens in the background. It should never be out in the front. It should happen like magic in the background. And that's really what we want to be showing you, and it's one of those difficult things which we show. So you want to be seeing things happening within the application which you're familiar with. So it's at this point now that we're going to start changing this data within Adept, and we want to get that data through to ERP. So what we want to do is we want to do a batch update of all those documents which have been listed for Galea Jones, and we're going to start assigning some data. Let me just wait for that data to come up, and I'll talk you through that. So we're going to do a batch update. Here we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it a project number. We're going to choose a project number. We're going to give it a project name. And we're going to give it a vendor. And so we'll put a vendor called Synergist in there. And we'll update the document. So now what's actually happening is once we hit submit, we're sitting and we're watching for that trigger within the application. And because we got the connector to Synergist, it signals that the documents have changed and I've got something to send to ERP. And the minute we've submitted it, it opens up and produces the file customer details out. So essentially, it's instantaneous. It happens within sub-seconds of it actually happening. You will see that it's taken the address because it's noted that the address has changed from Salesforce into Adept. We need to change the master data within ERP. It's given us a project number. It's given us a project name. And it's given us a vendor. And that's pretty much what we've done. So it's just a really simple way of showing how integration works by just using applications. Now, just think of it. Any application works the same way, whether it's Excel or whether we're talking about ERP or whether we're talking flat file at the end of the day. Applications are applications at the end of the day. The complexity of connecting up to them is really where the rub lies. So that's just a very simple demonstration of what it looks like. So what I want to do is just the last little bits of the technical side, just show you what that code looked like, how we built that code, okay? And it's really complicated. You can see it's one process flow. There we go. Get data, update, open the Excel, update the Excel, save the Excel, put it in another file. Thank you very much. Okay, let's talk about the mapping table. The mapping table is, there are our titles from Adept. Update the Excel sheet and just map that through. It's really simple. And for those who are not technical, that's the last of the technical. So you can come and have a chat with me a little later and we can go into more detail of it. But essentially, it's really, what we've tried to do is leverage a tool which doesn't take months and years to get integrations in place. Really simplify that into one single platform where all orchestrations and all integration can take place, and making that process a lot less painful for you and your corporate. And I'm going to hand back over to Scott at this point.
Great. Thank you, Jean. Do you guys have any quick questions? We'll have time for questions at the end as well, but just seeing that flow, anything coming up that you just want to ask Jean now? Feel free. Hands, no? Okay. All right. So I want to just go over the licensing model for Adept Integrator, just help you guys understand, well, how is this thing offered? And I'll kind of go through the components. So first off, there's kind of the baseline is the software platform, the Adept Integrator software platform. That's where we start. And you would either, and John would make a recommendation based on your requirements, the number of applications, the amount of processing power you need. You might need 4 or 8 thread processes as far as your software platform, and you can always upgrade that. We'll talk about threads a little bit later to help you understand. It's basically concurrent processes. How many concurrent processes do you need? Beyond that, you may have tier 1 connectors. These are the tier 1 connectors. So if it's not on this list, it's not a tier 1 connector. That's Adept, SAP, Oracle, JD Edwards, et cetera. You see the list here: Microsoft Project, Oracle Primavera, Prism Cost Control. So number of different applications, SharePoint. So if everybody that's integrating Adept with something would need the Adept connector, the Adept Tier 1 connector. We're offering that. That's included right now for kind of an introductory time period. And then if there was SAP or Oracle, you would add that. You may have a Tier 2 connector. Still, this is an out-of-the-box kind of a connector. It's just not quite as robust as the Tier 1 connectors, but there's still a lot there that's been developed. So you can see the list of applications there. Now, if you don't have a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 connector, you would then have a connector built for you. We would build a connector, or you could build a connector as well. We call that a custom connector, so there would be services for that. If you've got Tier 1 or Tier 2 connectors or a combination of, there's services for that as well. So that's certainly part of what is needed is these configuration services. And then maintenance, of course, on the software. And if we're building a custom connector for you, there's maintenance on what we build for you so that we can maintain it with new releases of Adept, new releases of, let's say, SAP. So when there is a new release, you're assured that your integration will continue to work. And then optionally, Integrator Studio. So all of the connectors, the Tier 1, the Tier 2, any custom connectors we've built, those are all built with the Studio. So that's kind of your ability. If you want to take this on yourselves, do your own data flows, be able to edit them, modify them, and develop on top of them, then you would need the Studio with that. So this is kind of how it all breaks down in terms of a little more detail and the kind of overview of the pricing of the software. The services, of course, we need to just understand what it is you really want to accomplish. But in terms of software, 4 or 8 thread platform, you can see the pricing there. Your Tier 1 connectors, other than Adept, are $10,000 each. Tier 2, $7,000 for those connectors. And then services, we'd figure that out, maintenance, and then maintenance on the custom connector services. If you're purchasing Studio, you will need the training. You've definitely got to have that, and that's 7 days at our training center. Understanding threads. So just kind of talk us through this quickly. The idea behind threads is that an integrator project may have several different business processes, each working at different timings. One may be invoked when a new order is entered into a system, another when an email arrives, another every 30 minutes, et cetera. And when processes are invoked at the same time, or while other processes haven't yet completed their flow, they're concurrent processes. And that's how we license the software platform, is by concurrent processes. So if the integrator license is limited to 4, then up to 4 can run at the same time. You can break processes into subflows to run in parallel, and each flow part is a concurrent process. So I think the main piece we'd want you guys to know here is just that 4 concurrent processes is a lot of processing power. Most customers will only need 4. Some may span up to 8. It certainly can go higher than that. John, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, let me give you a bit of a view on that. Every single one of those processes, so let's say that capital process, which is running, that's a process. It's not a physical process on the server as you would traditionally know processing power. So let me give you some example of scalability. Let's say it would take, we'd run a process. It would run in half a second, or let's just do easy math for you. It will run in a second. That process runs from beginning to end in a second. You can run 4 of those concurrently. So in 1 second, 4 processes have run. Then the next 4 could run off. So now run that into a time scale of 24 hours. That's the processing power, no matter how big that process is, of the server. So you don't have to change anything in terms of your software. It's just how you daisy chain and pull the workflows together. It doesn't matter how much data is going through this thing, to how much processes, to how big the hardware is. Your only constraint at the end of the day is going to be how many concurrent processes do I want to run concurrently, okay? And how much data do I want to put? And if you have a server farm, a massive server farm of processing power, you could run an insurance company. And we've got an insurance company in South Africa running 64 processes, or 64 threads, running every single claim in the country, and also in Europe with 64 processes, or 64 threads. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge amount of processing power which you have with the software. So it's enterprise grade. And one thing I don't talk about there is that we leverage a technology called in-memory data gridding, okay, which is a new philosophy. It's a new standard which has come into the market, which basically uses the RAM and shares RAM with a number of servers to actually process that power and process transactions really quickly and through that process. So yeah, I'll give you an example. Microsoft, we were looking at a global rollout of just 16 threads, and that was Microsoft running globally. So yeah, that should give you a view. 4 threads is more than ample.
And just kind of wrapping up here, and we'll open it up for questions. I think the one thing we would want you guys to take away is that really anything is possible with Integrator, nearly anything. If you can imagine it, if you can imagine some kind of an integration scenario, it's highly likely that we can do it. So we've talked about ERP, work orders, scheduling with Primavera or project controls, GIS, ERP, just the list goes on, web forms. So talk to us. Jean will be here the rest of the day. Let us know how we can help. We can brainstorm with you and see if there may be a fit. With that,
Okay.
Let's open it up for questions. Yeah, Bill.
First of all, thank you. Very good presentation. To pull back to the beginning of this process, for my benefit, each company, organization has many different levels: IT, upper management, production, safety, who knows what. I'm trying to get a better feel of who approaches you within these organizations for this type of application, or the need to combine it with the different tools and apps. Why this versus something else? I'm trying to understand who kicks it off from within these companies. Who do you typically deal with who describes their need to come down to this solution or this possible tool? Maybe that's a tough question to answer, but I want to understand the starting point.
Great question.
It's a very good question. We've found the most success when business drives the request. So if it's engineering would drive the cost, the request, or cost control, or finance, or somebody. But when business drives the request, because the reason why it's best that they drive it is they understand the business process which they need. They understand the pain. They're struggling with inputting data in many systems at this point, and they know what they need to achieve their goal. So that business process, because that's where we start. If it starts there, we then, after that, filter down to the IT folk. So I always like the initial engagement to come from business. We spend the majority, 80% of our time with business, understanding the business process. And then with them, we engage the services of the organization, whether it be IT. And then we get down into the nitty-gritties. You know, well, what version of ERP do you have? What's your CAD process to opening up that particular port on the firewall? You know, how do we load up onto the database? I mean, that's IT stuff, and that's really simple to do. It's just a matter of breaking down barriers. But if the business need is not there, integration doesn't work. Okay.
How successful are you in pulling the different departments of a company together through that process? Because, like in our organization, I'll use the term business. You could have accounting,
That's it.
the business side, you have project management, and everyone has their own little universe and world and what they want to see. Someone starts it, but invariably the others are left out, and the key information isn't brought together for a system that works for all. So do you help guide or suggest that those other entities get involved along the way?
Absolutely. So our standard approach is that we would do a discovery workshop with you, okay? And usually that ranges anything from 1 to 3 days, okay, depending on how big that orchestration is. In the instance of that gold mine, it was a 3-day discovery. And what we did is we brought, it was first initiated by the head of projects. He said, I have this need to run the capital process within the organization. But then all of a sudden, we needed to talk to finance to understand how their operation worked. And then we needed to talk to the SharePoint guys. And then we needed to talk to the data warehouse guys. And then all of a sudden, what we did is that we bring those groups together as that business process starts building out. And then that's what we specialize in, to bring everybody together and then define that business process end to end. And once you've defined that business process end to end, then you can drop down into the data sets. How does the data look? Give us examples of that scenario. So what we really like doing is talk about a high-level business process, and then let's get down into the data. Show us what a data, what a capital form looks like. Show us that Excel sheet which you use to send data from left to right. You know, let's go to finance. Let's understand their need. Let's go to risk. Let's go to safety. You know, they all have their own applications, and then we drop down and understand their world, and then we underpin that with that business process. So yes, that discovery workshop is essential for us. This was partly some of the best practices I've developed over the years. I've just come through an integration with a large project in London. I'm not going to name it, but it's a 55 billion pound capital project, and headed up by one of the bigger companies. And they didn't start at the business process. They pulled everybody together and threw up a mapping table and said, well, there's Oracle, there's Prism. Well, how do we map the data? And it was like, everybody started stumped, looked at the data and said, well, we don't understand what you want to do, what you're trying to achieve. So we first need to understand that what you're trying to achieve before we get down into that level of data.
So you really act as a cog in the wagon wheel, bringing all these outside sources together, and hopefully have been very good at avoiding the arrows that fly periodically through there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. We do a lot of facilitation, and that's really what we do in those discovery workshops.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great question. Any other questions? We got one here, and then we'll come into the back as well.
My question was, I've done integration, maybe not on the business side, this is more process side, but inevitably things break. So how does this type of integration, how do you indicate that something's broken before it takes a human to actually interact and say, oh, I'm missing this data?
Yeah. So one of the topics which we cover in our discovery workshop would be error handling. And what we do at that point is we try define an error process which is going to work for you. You know, traditionally IT want errors to be logged in a database. That doesn't work because that's after the fact. When we spoke about the gold mine, they wanted real-time error handling. So, and they didn't want IT to be involved. I mean, it was really a simple case that my project's not loaded in the cost management system. I want to know why it's not there, or that transaction didn't happen. So the minute that integration failed, an email went off to the business owner saying, hey, this transaction didn't happen for whatever reason. It was maybe missing a date or a time phase data or something like that, so that somebody can go back into the application and change it. So what I'm trying to say about error handling and breaking in data is we spend time with you understanding how you want to build that process. Do you want to log a ticket? Do you want to receive an email? Do you want it to go out as an XML file? Do you want it to go out onto a dashboard? Let's define that process with you, and then we will build that in the integration, because it's really simple for us to build. We just build an error process. And our experience has been is that we've used Exchange very effectively in managing errors, rather than waiting for it to come through a system management tool such as Tivoli or something like that out in the marketplace. When it comes to the business user, hey, my project's not there, the project data is not there. They can do something far quicker than IT or logging a call. And that's how we've done it in the past. So it's up to you guys how we build it.
One more question in the back, and then we'll let everybody get on to our break.
With the integrator, can you set it up so after the workflow is completed, then it integrates with your other system?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, you can set it up, you can build a workflow and wait for that to be finished before it integrates. It's pretty open-ended. It's how we conceptualize that business process for you. Okay, what are the triggers? At what point do you want that data to go through? And so, yes, you can set that up. I hope I answered the question.
Yes. Yes, you have.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're at 10 o'clock, so we will reconvene back here at 10:30 for our customer panel.
Thank you very much.